Ah, beautiful snowy day up here where we are. Good morning, everybody. I got to spend my morning building shelving, and then my Shifu came up and we set our guqin, the two Chinese musical instruments. The traditional way to play them together is to put them back to back, and so we would face each other across the table and we played the instruments. It was a lot of fun. It's my first time officially playing a guqin instrument. And so if any of you have been following me on the Patreon, you've been following my slow progress through this. And this is my first time actually getting the chance to play. And so it's a pretty nice experience. Take a moment, get comfortable in a chair or sitting on the floor or standing if you prefer. And we'll spend just a few minutes softening and settling. Get this sorted out. I got so caught up in playing that I had to rush back up to Serenity. Soften your neck and your shoulders, allowing your head to float up comfortably. The only thing pulling our head down is the tension in our neck and shoulders. By releasing that, top of the head floats up. Perhaps you feel a few millimeters taller, and then the shoulders release downward. The elbows grow heavy. You could simply set your hands on your knees if you'd like, or allow them to fall alongside. Allow your chest to soften rather than holding it up. Your shoulder blades release away from the spine, softening down your back. Soften your belly, sides of your abdomen, your rib side, releasing your lower back. Allow your breath to be full and comfortable and natural. Avoid trying to force the breath in or out, but rather to let go of anything holding and restraining the breath in. And allow the weight to rest just in front of the sitting bones. Softening your hips, the feet resting flat against the floor, and your legs nice and soft. Just another minute or so of quiet opening. Allow your mind to slow down. We have to slow down in order to be able to have access to those aspects of our body and our mind and the healthy emotional state. That's the medicine. That's the healing part. Agitated, and then we try to to our practice, we just get more of that. So we have to learn to slow down, to settle, to soften. And then that becomes the medicine that we apply to the body. Remember to only work with warm hands during this practice. So Melanie was nice enough to bring me hot tea. It's snowy out there. So if you have your hot drink, or you just scrub your hands together, or if you have a warm dog, you have a nice cat to hold on to, warm yourself up. And we're going to place the centers of our palms on the very top of the head. Gentle circles, opening a point there. I know we have at least one person here that is fairly new to this set, and so I'll give some verbal reminders, but I know that most of you have been following since day one, so I don't want to go over too many times. Gentle circles, not compressing the neck, not tightening the shoulders. Both directions. You can relax your arms down, especially if your shoulders become tired. Always take a break when you need to.
Chris asks, is it black pour?
I don't know. Mel made it. Is it black pour? Let's taste it and
I
see.
don't actually remember.
I haven't tasted it yet. Mm-hmm. This is a home store black pour. My guess is 2015. Slight oaky flavor, a hint of long travel over the ocean. I don't really know. I think it's black pour. It's good tea. 7cups.com. Support them. They're wonderful people. Hands nice and warm. We're going to start on the back of the head, moving from the front to the back. Dragging your fingertips over your scalp. All over your scalp from your eyebrows to the back of your head, emphasizing this line that's along the corner of the head, but really anywhere that feels stuck, anywhere that your hairstyle allows. I recognize the importance of the hairstyle. And then again, with the hands nice and warm, we're going to warm the back of the head. You can let your thumb trace that line at the base of the skull, the top of the neck. Pressing just hard enough to begin to warm that space. Just the weight of your hand. Both sides. And then the neck itself and your thumb or your fingertips can reach down to work that point at C7, just below C7, the very base of the neck, that big bone down there, as well as the sides of your neck. Again, not pushing too hard, just enough to reach into that space below the level of the skin on top of the musculature, warming the channels. Most of these, at this stage, I'm doing 36 times, but feel free to do more if you'd like, or less if your skin is feeling sensitive. Both sides. again, as a reminder, for those of you who have been learning to practice a bit, you can reach up and tighten your shoulder and push your shoulder forward, which will strain your neck and obstruct the channels. Or as your arm moves up, your shoulder blade can sink down the back so that as your hand comes up, your shoulder actually opens and softens. And so every time I rub the back of my neck, my shoulder is letting go this way. And that is something we do want to cultivate even in a practice like this. If that sounds especially difficult, don't worry about it. There are other practices that cultivate that skill. So from there, moving to the front. Palms nice and warm. Once the hands get hot, settle the palms over the eyes, allowing that warmth to soak into the eyes, soften the musculature around the eyes, the space behind, and then ironing off the sides 3 times. Feel free to do more if you deal with regular eye strain. Pulling off to the sides with the fingertips. This space alongside the nose here, gentle circles. Stimulating this point alongside the nose can help clear the sinuses, any congestion you might have in the morning. If you're a sniffly sort of individual in the morning, spend some time here when you first get up. Again, not pressing hard, just enough to stimulate the point. And then massaging up and down. From that point all the way up to the scalp line. And back down. Warming and softening this line. And then circling around the eyes, using your fingertips to warm and coax movement through this bony prominence around the eye, just the orbit of the eye. Please don't push directly on your eyeball. I'm doing this 36 times in both directions. Just enough to sink below the level of the skin, to warm and nurture the fluids and tissues just beneath the skin. If you push too hard, you'll actually trap the tissues against the bone and obstruct flow. Not helpful. And then using the index fingers, the sides of the index, to massage that space between the eyebrows and that very end of the eyebrow, or the beginning of the eyebrow perhaps. Massaging up and down. This is an area that people tend to compress into. And so all of these movements that we're doing are warming and softening that tissue open away from these set patterns. And then likewise, taking those sides of the fingers and drawing off, pulling off the sides, not too hard, moving fluid along the length of the eyebrow toward the temple. Gentle. Then with the fingertips, softly circling over the temple, just the outer edge of the orbit of the eye, between the end of the eyes and the end of the eyebrows. And then we'll move down to the sides of the jaw. If you were to make a little angle from your jaw, the jawbone, go in from the tip of that V onto the musculature there, and then very gently circle. Again, just as a reminder, you're not trying to do deep massage. You're melting the fascia beneath, as though you have butter just beneath the surface of your skin, and you're warming it and circulating it until it melts, not squishing it. Both directions. I'm doing 36, but again, feel free to do more if this is an area of difficulty for you. Until a sense of warmth and life comes to the area. And now, the very front of the ear, there's that small flap of cartilage that, because humans are funny. And right where the ear meets the body in that line, gently massaging that point and the ear flap itself called the tragus. "36 times in both directions. Keep your jaw slightly open during the movement, just enough to make a space there. And then drawing a path between that point on the jaw and this point in front of the ear, up and down. Allow your fingers to trace behind the ears and slightly over that point on the ears. So for this next series, we'll be working in the ears and you won't be able to hear me. So I'll just give you the instructions ahead of time and then we'll move through the set. So first we will continue to massage the ears, over the ears this time and slightly behind, until the ears themselves feel warm as though you're pouring hot oil into the ears. And you might have this sense of heat radiating back out from the inside of the ear. That's a very good sign. We also massage the inside of the ears with the fingers, rub the sides of the ears all the way down to the earlobes themselves. Most of these about 36 times, but really doing it until you're done. And then we will compress the ears 18 times, 9 times if you're sensitive or fewer. Gentle compression waves into the ears, not too hard. And on the final compression, we'll tap our fingers against the back of the head, beating the heavenly drum. When you're ready, I'm hoping everyone can hear me. Warming the hands again. Circling over the face, the full face, just enough to help nourish circulation. Emphasizing again this movement that moves away from the scrunching, tensing movement that we have, pulling our face into the middle. Finding a way to soothe and to smooth the face. Both directions. And then when you're ready, the sides of the knuckles here, dragging down the sides of the neck. Softening your jaw, releasing the tissues that move downward toward the front, toward the collarbone, and then raking your fingers. Inward and downward, release the tissue there. I know somebody watching this tends to get migraines. One common cause of migraines is tension through the structures here, especially through the scalene, some deep musculature in here. When they clench, it tends to obstruct blood flow. So one of the ways to release it is these muscles move in this direction, and we simply, with our fingers, help them let go and ease a bit, all the way down to the collarbones. And then all the way down to the navel. We want to make sure there's nothing trapped in the head or in the shoulders. Allow your awareness to sink down toward the navel. And then closing. Hands resting on top of the navel. Just a moment of quiet meditation, a few breaths, awareness in that space beneath your warm palms. Mm-hmm. Good tea. Now moving outward along the arm.
A question from Chris. Any moves for a tight thyroid?
A tight thyroid? I'm not sure what you mean by a tight thyroid, but if you have tension for instance, in your throat, then those ones that we were doing will be very helpful, because the movement for release is through here. But very often, tension through this place here, there's another muscular sheet that runs all along this front. If you were to have a beard, or if you were to dribble soup, because you're a messy eater and it dribbles down, that's where this muscle is. And it has, I don't want to copy the movement, but if you were to clench your throat and make a face with your jaw, all of this that would pull in, that's the movement of this muscle. And so releasing it is this softening, lengthening quality. The jaw releases out, like we had talked before. The base of the tongue softens. The chest sinks, rather than this thing trying to pull your chest up and trying to pull your chin down, which goes like this. Instead, we soften away from each other. That quality. And so I'm assuming that's what you mean by that. Releasing any tension around this place. Because the thyroid is not a muscle. So then, softening the front of the shoulder. Do you want to turn that on, love? Is it too cold? You can feel free and turn it on. We'll see if it makes too much noise.
I think I'm okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
We turned the heater off for the classes because I'm nervous that the buzzing noise will make its way into the microphone.
Chris says, I think so. The base of the throat is a bit tight.
Yeah. That's a lot of it, is just this structural way of holding ourselves. Holding our breath, holding our tongue, holding our jaw, lifting our chest. Instead, we soften and lengthen, which is what this whole process does. So let's see after 100 days of this, if that's still tight. I'm imagining that it will be much softer. Releasing that space beneath the armpit. You can also, with your thumb, further soften this place in front, sinking in a little bit deeper into that space of the armpit just because of the tissue there. And of course, if you are at a time where you're having tender breast tissue, feel free instead to simply reach behind and gently massage that heart point. I know for some people, occasionally this area becomes very tender and you wouldn't want to rub across it. And so just gently massage and open that point. And then top of the shoulder. Remember what I said about the opposite shoulder relaxing to let the hand come up? And then you simply, with the weight of your arm, pull down. So this entire process of reaching across can be a softening of the shoulder, not a grabbing hold and trying to press in. Find a different way. Gentle circles, moving around, not trying to push in deep to the musculature, but rather warm the tissue above the muscle, soften and help circulation travel through that area. Gentle pressure. You can also work on that shoulder joint itself a little bit. I know at least a couple of you have pain along this line. Easing that space. And then the whole upper arm. Softening and releasing. Just the weight of the hand. Melting that tissue beneath the skin. And then at the crook of the elbow, just at the end of this elbow crease on the top of the arm, very gently massaging, softening that space. Melting the fascial system. And then just below that, a few inches down in the line toward the index finger. And again, for most of these practices, the emphasis is on moving outward toward the extremities, toward the fingers, toward the toes, lower in the body, aiding circulation to go down. And I'm just using the weight of my hand. I'm not trying to sink in deep to the musculature. If you're somebody who uses the computer a lot, or you find tension here for any reason, spend extra time here. And then the inside of the elbow, in that crease right in the center, allowing the movement to travel down toward the thumb and the index finger. Shoulders soft. And a quick test. You don't have to write anything down. For those of you that have been taking this class for a little while, what is your intent? What is the space mentally and emotionally that is guiding your practice? How are you touching and engaging with your body? And then working the very center of the wrist, both sides. That space a couple inches below the wrist crease between the two tendons on both sides, the inner and outer gate.
I like Chris's answer. He says loving.
Yeah, loving. This is a good answer, Chris. This loving, gentle, compassionate quality. We tend to only ever do things to our body to change it, to force it, to dislike it, to make it something other than it is. This way of being in our bodies that we other our body. We make it as though it's not part of who and what we are. So to take the time to be soft and gentle and present and put the intention of love into every movement, that quality is part of the healing within this set. It's one of the reasons for its gentle quality. And then softening that small intestine and heart channel just on the other side, just below the bone on the wrist. Gentle stimulation and circles, warming, softening this area. For a lot of people, this area becomes very weak and feels brittle. Maybe it pops as you move, or if you carry something heavy, it starts to hurt. And so we want to gently encourage circulation and warmth in this space. This can also be very good for anxiety. If any of you have difficulty with that. And then working the large intestine forepoint, just in that space between the thumb and the index finger. Settling your other thumb into that space. And if you like, you can put your middle finger or your index finger on that opposite side of your hand. There's another good point there. Small intestine 3. And simply moving them toward each other in a gentle circle, not pushing hard enough to compress the musculature and stop circulation, but instead enough to stimulate the point and encourage qi flow and the release of the tissue. The next time you or somebody that you know has a headache, especially if it's a frontal headache, this point with medium level stimulation, try it for about 15 minutes and let me know how it goes. Gently compressing, pulling off of each of your fingers. You can warm and encourage the flow down to the fingertips. Again, as a reminder, there's no musculature in the fingers. And so we have to really help them circulate, help them be warm. Other side. Intentionally loving touch, intentionally compassionate, kind. Unconditional friendliness. That's what I learned from Melanie. And then beneath the arm. For those of you who have more breast tissue than I do, everybody's a bit different, you may intentionally include any kind of breast massage or something that feels comfortable that helps the ductwork and the circulation in this area. I know there's an area of stagnation for a number of you. And so you might just include in your practice some of that work. On my body type, of course, I don't really require that. And so it's not really included in the set. But feel free to add it any space that is important for you to add. Feel free to explore it. And as well, include them in the chat or just let me know about it privately so that I can share it with others in the future. Working the top of the shoulder. Lots of different types of bodies, all of them deserving of love. And it's funny how easy it is to say that, but often in our heads, we'll be able to say that about everybody else but us. So this is your chance to negate that habit. Be gentle, and loving, and kind. Softening the shoulder joint itself. If you need to relax your other arm because you've been holding it tightly, feel free to shake it out anytime. Don't practice tension. Move it around. And then the upper arm. Inside and outside. Should feel good. And then that point on the outside of the arm, on the tan side of the arm, or some of you don't get very tan, on the freckled side of your arm, where the elbow fold is at, circling with the fist, just gentle pressure. And then the space below that, you might find that it's lumpy or tight. You may feel like your forearm is filled with cables, tight cables. And so they just require warming and softening. Some of you may have experienced taffy, some kind of sugar treat where it moves from cold and hard and brittle to soft and semi-liquid and warm. And that's what we're doing to our tissues. We're warming and softening them, not pushing them around, not breaking them up, none of these ideas. Loving touch. And then the same on the inside. A soft elbow fold here. This is an area that for many of you has been abused by the medical system. And so you may even find it abhorrent or emotionally uncomfortable to make physical contact with this area because of trauma. Acknowledge that trauma and be very gentle. Help it release, help it move down toward the hand, out of your body. It's amazing how those things get trapped in the body. And then pericardium 6, triple warmer 5. And then softening the heart and small intestine line, just along this line here on the outside of the bone.
Chris says, you mean those forearm cables musicians get aren't a good thing?
It's amazing how we develop those things. Sometimes in the clinic, I can have a sense of what somebody does for a living based on the pattern they're holding in their body. It's as though their job freezes them in a location and then they stay there throughout the rest of their lives, even if they've retired. Musicians have that too, in their jaw and their throat, in their shoulders and upper back, and in their hands, disconnection with their legs. And then that large intestine 4-point on the side of the hand. And very gently, when you're done, warming, circulating all the way to the tips of the fingers, especially on any problematic fingers like me. I've broken all of my fingers. I've broken a lot of the bones in my body, but my hands in particular have been beat up through silliness. And so I spend a lot of time doing things like this throughout the day. This can just be a good habit to be in. Highly recommended. 10 out of 10. Shaking your hands. Giving me some applause. Thank you very much. Shaking the water off of your hands. Just nice and soft. Find the angle and the position that gets to the spot in your wrists and hands that have the most abuse. Sometimes it's palms up and people shake like this, like an upset Italian. Hey! Or this way, like a bird trying to take flight. Maybe sideways. For everybody, it's a position. This is the no, 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 don't park there. Notice how your arms feel. Should be nice feeling. So now we're going to brush up the outside from the fingertips to the shoulder, down the inside, back to the fingertips. Helping circulation travel to the fingertips and then return back to the body. I'm just doing 9 times on both sides, but you can do more if you'd like. Closing. Letting go of anything that might be accumulated in the upper body. For those of you following later or who are taking breaks as we go, these are the moments we want to take the breaks, when everything is settled back down again. Maybe finish a section, then settle your chi. Let everything come back down. You don't want to stop while everything is still built and stimulated up high. It's not safe to have your chi constantly rushing upward. Feels good. And then, center of the chest. Warming the sternum. And again, if you have breast pain or tension around the breast, then you might want to rub sideways across the tissue toward and away, just to get into the striations and spaces between the ribs, depending on how your body is shaped. and only if it is not irritating but helps to soothe. And then the upper space here in the abdomen, the solar plexus, placed just between the V of the ribs. I'm using the base of my thumb to soothe that line. 36 in both directions. This is a space, along with the rib side, that tends to collect a lot of emotion from agitation and holding of the breath, tightening of the core because of stress. We want to be especially gentle and kind. Kindness is the exact opposite. It's the antidote to frustration and anger. Be kind. And then the space below that, between the navel and that solar plexus point. Make sure your posture is comfortable, upright, relaxed. Notice if you have the habit of holding your breath, and stop it. Both sides, both directions. Continuing to soften your hands. And now let's move to that space beneath the ribs, using this soft front part of the knuckles here to gently reach in and soften that space just beneath the line of the ribs, from the floating ribs, most. And then using our fingertips to rake in those spaces between the ribs. Pulling forward and down, you'll notice for most people, their ribs travel in this forward and downward line. So allow your fingertips to sink in just a little bit into those spaces between the ribs, the intercostal spaces. Feel the warmth of your hands soaking in and softening those spaces as well. Another place that tends to be easy to catch patterns of anger and frustration. So you want to soothe that space. Friendliness soaking in. Good humor. Silliness is the antidote to serious frustration, which is why I wear these socks. Take your time. Now we're going to scrub across the navel. There's some wonderful points at the level of the navel, stomach 25, spleen 15, and of course the navel itself. And this is an area we want to be warm. It should always be warm if possible. Both sides. Allowing that softness of the hands to communicate into the belly, allowing part of the communication to be this gentle effortlessness. today when I was playing my instrument, my stringed instrument next to my instructor, they were side by side. We were tuning them so they would fit each other. When we were in tune, he would play one of his strings, and then that string would sound on my instrument. And that's how we knew we were in tune. And that's partially what we're doing here. That principle of resonance happens here. If you can soften your hands, but you have trouble softening your belly, which is common, allow the softness of your hands to find its way in. Let your belly resonate to that new note, that new sound, that possibility. And you'll find that that communication between parts of your body can happen. And now, this point here, the front of the inguinal crease, soft space, just below the level of those tight tendons we tend to have here. Emphasizing the downward direction toward the feet, pushing chi down to the toes. And again, in case you happen to be somebody who menstruates, that space below the navel, above, warmth soaks in, and you may find that very during menstrual periods. But again, because I'm selfish, I tend to make this set about my body type, but you have to be willing to change it to suit yourself. With the palms, circling around to the lower back. Allow the warmth of the palms to soak in as long as the hands can get warm. I'm going to turn the heater on so that Melanie isn't cold.
Let us know if it's distracting. And oh, that's very high.
It is a curious phenomena that I become uncomfortable if Melanie's hands are cold. We want to keep her warm too.
You're very
Allow that heat to soak in and nourish the lower back. And as a reminder for those of you who might be new, if it's too difficult to place your palms on your lower back because of shoulder or wrist tension, feel free to rotate your hand so that the back of your hand is touching, maybe only one hand at a time. Make sure that you don't lean forward or arch your back, but you're still perfectly soft. Allow the softness, again, of your hands, which are probably becoming more and more soft as we practice. Let that softness soak into the lower back. Up and down, emphasizing the downward direction on those muscles alongside the spine. And then with this inner part of the fist, side to side. This is at the level of the navel, but in your back. There's a point in the spine called the Mingmen, brushing across the Mingmen side to side on the bladder points along the back. And notice, you might see my body shaking because my legs are so loose, but I'm not pushing my legs back and forth. I'm just turning my waist and softening my shoulders. I don't want to give the wrong impression. And then it's called the eye on the Mingmen itself. Warming the Mingmen, warming the base of the again, perhaps 36 times. You can always do more.
I think T might be leaving. They just sent a wave emoji.
River's heading out. Thank you for joining us. Oh, it's o'clock. And then using our fingertips and palms to rub the length of the tailbone to the very tip of the tailbone. And thank you everybody for sounding out when you're here, because there's no way for us to know who's here if you don't put something in the text. And so we can see that there's more people that come to these classes than let us know, but we don't know who you are. So unless you're purposefully stealthy, lurking, we would love to know who you are. Warming the tailbone until a sense of warmth penetrates into that point, especially if you're somebody who sits on cold surfaces. Spend extra time helping that warmth to soak in. Maybe take a hot bath later. Moving down the legs. Coming up, center at the top of the glutes. And then the very center of the glutes themselves, that circle of the muscle. If you're a larger bodied person or sitting in a chair, it's difficult to reach this point.
Oh, we have a message.
Dolores is here.
Hi, Jen. So happy to join. Thank you.
I'm glad that you joined. Dolores, if you have questions along the way, feel free to ask. I know you've done this set before. And then moving now down. So at this point, just in case you've come in late, we've worked the entire top body, now moving down through the legs. The center, the sides of the legs, gentle circles with the palms or the fingertips. As a reminder, just the weight of the hand. We're not trying to sink into the musculature. We're sinking just beneath the surface of the skin to that quiet layer between. The spaces between that feel empty. We want them to be warm and soft. And Dolores, I heard there was a question about where to find this backlog in case you want them. And I'm storing all of any class where I'm using people's names. I don't want to store them on open YouTube. So instead I put them into my Patreon page, and I have collections there of different group classes and all of the ones that we've done so far for this 100-day series, in case you'd like to find them. And then the very front corner of this muscle.
And where can I find the Patreon? Or do they know the link already?
The link is on my website, snakeandturtle.com. Melanie's very helpful. Do you want to put it in? Thank you. And the patreon.com/John Blue. That's just a nicer place to have collections of information. Some of the information is I'm setting aside just for members, but it's only a few dollars to join. But it keeps it away from the masses of people posting and reposting on YouTube. Hopefully. And then transferring to the inner corner. This is stomach 34 if you're looking up these points. Along this line here, just above spleen 10. And liver 8 on the sides of the legs, all open so you can see it more easily. Warm and loving touch. Your hands softer and softer with each circulation. It's so lovely having people come here that are already part of the community studying with ZhiCheng Shifu. And since a number of you have had lots of experience already within the system, always feel free to include your own suggestions and responses in the chats for any of the videos, because you contain a lot of the same information as I do. And it's nice to have more perspectives than just mine. Now we're going to move below the level of the knee. So along my shin here, the outside of my shin, just below the level of the knee, in the center of this musculature. This is the stomach 36 point. On both sides, you can use your fingertips, you can use your palms to warm those points. Everyone's body shape is a little bit different. You want warmth and fresh, clear chi to soak in to stimulate these fantastic points. And if you'd like, at the same time, there's a spleen 9 point just here on the other side of the shin bone, the tibia, in the soft place at the top of the tibia. So you can massage both at the same time. Not trying to dig into the musculature, but to warm the channel, emphasizing the movement toward the feet. And then similarly, keeping your thumbs on those spleen 9 points if you'd like. There's a point on the outside, just a little further out and a little further up from that stomach 36 point we were just working on. Between a couple of bones here, the front of this, the head of this bone and the head of the bone inside. That space between those two little bones, gallbladder 34, it's along the side of the leg. If you can't quite find it, it's okay. And just rub in general the sides of the leg. And then either online or in person, I'm happy to show you how to find those. I'm going to continue to work that point on the inside of my leg at the same time as gallbladder 34. Sending warmth down toward the feet. Should feel pretty nice. And now, behind the knee. So in the crease of the knee, called the popliteal crease, which is an awesome name. Popliteal. Fabulous, right? In that crease between the two tendons, in the very soft space, you can either gently rub those with your fingers. If you're in pain later, you can press your thumbs in there and get it nice and stimulated. But for now, that's not what we're working on. We're gently releasing that fascia behind the knee, beneath the skin, warming and softening. Allow your breath to be comfortable and gentle. Notice your posture. Are you doing this? This? Not helpful. Allow your body to be soft. If you're able to, move gently. You don't have to do both legs at the same time if it's too difficult for any reason. Feel free to do them one at a time and adjust your posture. Sit in a chair, sit on the floor, lie in your bed, pull your knee up. Simply warm and soften this line. Everyone is different. Good. On the knees. This point, Lao Gong point, the center of the hand, circling around the kneecap. Fingertips can gently stimulate those points we were working on. So I'll do more of these this time than we did before because I love this one. So let's do it 60 times in both directions. Unless you start to feel sore in your back. Many people, they're holding themselves up so their backs become sore, or they collapse so their backs become sore. Try to find something in between. And if you need to take a break, feel free. I'm creating this movement from my hips, not from my back or my shoulders. All I'm doing is keeping in a perfectly upright position, flexing a little at the hips, and my hands do this. So you want less movement, more comfort, greater softness. Keep your neck released so that the head moves up. Your breath comfortable. I hear at least one of you holding your breath. Both directions. While you make this circle, the direction of your intent is inward toward the knee, nourishing, supporting, being kind. In Qigong methods, this is also nourishing for the kidneys. So it's a good one to do at any time of the year. But I know at least one of you has knee pain, so I want to spend lots of time here. And then a few returning in the other direction, down the outside, up the inside. And then with the fingertips, raking the tissues up. From below the knee, just let your fingertips sink in a little bit to the tissue and press a little into the bone. It's as though you're helping draw the tissue up that's just beneath the skin, pulling it up toward the knee. Don't use your back muscles. Don't use your shoulder tension to create this. Hips, and then sit upright. If you can. If that's too difficult, then don't worry about it. Just be gentle. Maybe do fewer. You just want to move like a drinking bird, one of those old toys. From there, crossing the leg if you'd like. You don't have to do this. You can simply put your foot on the floor or set it anywhere you'd like or lean from a chair. This is just convenient for this position. If you have knee pain, make sure that you're supporting your knee, shearing pressure across the knee. That makes it uncomfortable. At different periods when I've injured my knees, I couldn't sit like this because this pressure would be too much. And so feel free to adjust. Again, I'm just doing this because it's the easiest for this camera and this stool. You could even do them both sides at the same time if you'd like. With your thumbs, gently pressing in to that space at the top of the calf muscle, the top of the V of the calf muscles. This is that fun word, the bifurcation of the gastrocnemius. So many fun medical terms. Sinking into that muscle beneath the outer layer of the calf. Moving the thumbs around a bit. If it's particularly tender, just be gentle. You can also move gently downward along the Achilles toward your heel, tracing that path. softening that tendon. Often, as Chris was mentioning, these sinews become tight like, cello strings, or just they're bands of steel inside the body. And when that happens, this is creating a great deal of stress on the body and inhibiting circulation and movement. You want a sense of softness through these ligaments and tendons. And by pressing and gently stimulating them, and again, communicating the softness of your hands and your intent into the tissues, it changes them. It's transformative. And then if you'd like, you can also soften that muscle alongside the shin, alongside the tibia. It's called the anterior tibialis. Just means in front of the bone. Working your way down, softening what is perhaps otherwise completely paralyzed, deconditioned, tight. And you can also pluck across the calf muscle this way, just grasping it from the side, gently stimulating and squeezing the belly of the muscle, depending on the size of your hands and the size of your leg, creating gentle stimulation of, again, what might otherwise be very tight. And then up here on spleen 6, just one hand's breadth above the shin bone, this medial malleolus, the ankle bone, on the inside of the shin bone, in that soft space. Rubbing your palm, warming that area. You can also extend these circles to that space around and below the ankle. And again, especially for anybody who might be menstruating, or often they're about to menstruate, this can become very tender. Or during the menopausal process, at the other end of that cycle. So being gentle and nourishing this space can often be very helpful for the symptoms associated with that. I'm doing more than 36 here because for many people this is cold and hard. And now moving down to the bottom of the foot, along the center line of the foot, from the heel to the base of the toes, with your thumb. With your fingers sinking into the other side, the space between the first and second toe, that line of tendon there. Liver 3 on the top, kidney 1 on the bottom. And then with your palms, simply warming the side of your feet. Maybe 60 times in this until your feet get warm in the very least, pushing outward toward your toes, helping circulation. If you find your feet cold or hard, maybe do it 160 times. Again, you're not pushing hard. You're not trying to massage your feet in the way that we normally think about it, like a Swedish massage. You're warming the fascial system. You're warming the channels, the spaces in between the muscles and the ligaments. Drinking your tea if you have any. The other side.
have a note from Alistair Berry.
Allie's here. Amazing.
Loving all this, John. I love how intuitive it feels. Being a huge anxious fidget, I have found myself doing a lot of this without realizing what was at play. Thanks so much.
That's a great statement. And commonly coming from the world of neurodivergence, maybe we can say, something that we call stimming is very common. And there's a lot of self-soothing behavior. And when you pay attention to it, very often, intuitively, people are soothing areas that are tightening, or we're moving qi along channels that are stagnant. And you'll see people do it all of the time, even small children. It's part of our makeup. It's one of the ways that we can learn how we function and what works best for us. And so I really appreciate that you're noticing that. And especially by doing these things, we can develop new intuitive habits because we become more in touch with those spaces that have been ignored.
And Dolores says, got 95% of class today. Thank you. Plan to join as regularly as possible. Really helpful.
That's wonderful. Yay, I'm glad that you made it, Dolores. Dolores is another one of those people that has a lot of experience and history within these practices and these arts of all kinds. Good resource in the community. Working your way down the Achilles toward the heel. If you like, at the same time, you can work that shin bone muscle. People who are long distance walkers and who tend to run a lot, or they wear boots, military people, there's often a lot of trauma along this connection between the muscle and the shin bone. And so we want to be very gentle and to bring circulation and softness back to this area that can often have literal millions of micro fractures, micro tears. And as well, plucking across, grasping across the calf muscle to soften there, especially if you're somebody who wears high heels of any kind and you're in this constant shortened state. You want to soothe this and the whole Achilles line. This point in the center of the calf is called the supporting mountain, Chengshan.
Allie says, I am a huge stimmer. I just tell everyone I'm a dancer.
That's perfect. And then warming spleen 6, kidney 6 below the ankle. Take your time, soft and gentle. Yeah, and for people that may be on the ADHD spectrum, or at least experience that in stressful situations, wherever on that spectrum that you lie, stimming can be a wonderful way to relieve some of that excess energy or to stimulate the parts of you that are otherwise falling low. And that allows people to either relax into the present movement more easily through that, quote, fidget, through those gentle self-stimulations, or for people that have ADHD that need to be stimulated in order to feel calm, this is a wonderful way to help nourish that side as well. And if you can begin to get in touch with which part of your body, which part of your system needs this gentle, consistent circulation, it becomes more and more intuitive over the years, and you just find yourself habitually taking care of things before they become problems. So fantastic. And thanks to one of you, I'm being sent a nice chair that has a swivel head. So as I do all of this swiveling, it'll be that much easier. So I thank you in advance. all of the things that I have in here, from the lights and the camera that I've got going on, this microphone, this backdrop, this is all donations. Everything that's provided by the people who are kind enough to help me. And so please know how much I appreciate all of your support. You make it possible to function as a charity. Hopefully we help heal the community together. Move this out of the way here. Sitting comfortably. Gentle circles. And looks like we're running a little late here, so we'll do a fewer of these.
You're a little out of frame based on. Oh wait, no, you're not. You're fine.
Oh,
sorry.
Thanks. Rotating your feet, your toes, your ankles, your knees, and very importantly, rotating on the that you're on.
Ali asks, can you do all this on the floor? I'm sorry if you answered. Oh wait, he says, oh well, that answers that.
Both directions. Yeah, these can be done lying in bed. Some of them, at least, can be done sitting in a car in traffic. Please don't try this one when you're in traffic, unless you're in the back seat. When I was apprenticing with the Japanese carpentry master, I would drive into Seattle first thing in the morning, and it would be an hour and a half, 2-hour drive. And I'd work all day, and then I'd go to classes with my instructor at night. And then I would drive home for another hour, hour and a half. And I had a lot of time in traffic. And a lot of these practices would go with me. And then softening upward, falling down. I'm only just going to go this far to make it easy to see. Raking upward over the knee, reaching down. Grasp with your hands, grasp with your feet, pulling up, lengthening toward the spine, falling upward and down. Hips. Don't tighten your thighs as you lean forward. Keep your legs soft. Don't pull yourself down toward your legs. Keep this length of your spine as we reach up. Maintain that length, fall over the top toward your feet. However far down you can go comfortably. Let's do this 9 times. If you're just starting this process, do fewer, because I don't want anybody to feel sore after this. You should feel warm and soft. We're not exercising. I'll go a little bit further, but only go as far as you feel comfortable, effortless, easy. Eventually, you want to have some sense of connecting to the kidney 1 points on the bottom of your feet. Keeping your thighs soft, your whole spine long. One more time. Very gentle, effortless movement. You're not twisting your shoulders, you're not twisting your head, you're not leaning. You're just moving side to side, letting your whole spine rotate gently. And then slowly coming back. Just a moment of stillness. Listen. Get a sense of how comfortable you are in your skin. Notice the place. Thank you very much. So I know some of you have to leave. I'll stick around just for a little bit to answer some extra questions if there are any. I know they take a little bit of time to come in. Ooh, I'll get my tea. Delicious tea. I feel like a radio producer pulling my mic. How may I help you?
Corey says thank you.
Thank you, Corey. I'm so glad that you came. Again, I encourage everyone to check out Corey's books online. I put their links in the last video series that I put up down below. But Corey L. Lee, 2 R's. Should always be plugging my friends.
I noticed that this movement here feels easier moving this direction than this direction. I'm not sure if that's common.
It is common. So Mel is mentioning that in these 2 directions, one of them feels easier than the other. And that's common for a number of reasons. In fact, for instance, I smashed my ankle when I was younger, doing judo. And if my ankle, I'm always aware of it. If my ankle is close to the microphone, you may hear that my ankle clicks in one direction, but not in the other. And over the years, I've had to reset it a number of times. But the same is true for all of our joints, that each circle, one of the reasons we circle in both directions is because you're actually accessing different tissues, different series of movements from one to the other. And often it's not just physical like it is in an ankle or in a hip, that kind of impingement, but sometimes it's neurological. We only know how to go one direction.
That's what it feels like for me. It's just there's like a lack of coordination or something happening and it freezes periodically. And
it's so interesting.
Yeah.
This tests that you can do like that. If everyone puts their hands together and then lets their fingers go through, and now do it again, but let your fingers go to the other side of your hands. And for a lot of people, that feels very strange because we only ever do one. And you can do that with a lot of things in their body. There's entire systems of healing that are designed to challenge our neurological functioning, how we think about our body and how we've trained it to move. And very often we only ever move in one direction. And so we want to make sure that we're always becoming liberated in both directions, not just through flexibility, but through mental flexibility as well. It's pretty interesting.
That's really cool.
These bodies are fascinating.
And Chris says he has a longish question, so please wait. I think he's formulating.
Oh, he's typing. We are all expectantly waiting Chris's question. Chris, you have hundreds of people waiting on you. No pressure.
I noticed that going through the movements, the massages under the ribs and the solar plexus and whatever the point is opposite the V here on the back was really helpful during my standing practice yesterday.
That's great. I'm really glad. One of the things about these points here is this is where the diaphragm is, this mechanism of breath. And for so many of us, if you haven't heard my breath dissertations, many of us, because this area is so frozen for a host of reasons, the only way we know how to breathe is instead of the diaphragm extending down, hollowing out, pulling the breath in, instead, we only know how to create that vacuum by lifting our shoulders, lifting our chest, panting by forcing everything outward this way because we're not able to move downward. And so by softening this line, everything about our structure and our breath changes. And of course, our breath is linked to our emotional state, our mental clarity, our energy level. And so just by taking time to release these areas, not only does it change, as Mel was mentioning, areas in the lower back, but it will shift everything about our body, especially if we're relieving old emotional patterns. And so it's a very worthwhile thing to spend time on.
So Chris asks, is there a time and place for deeper massage like thumper and lacrosse balls? And then a couple others. What is the purpose of these deeper layer massages? Do you recommend them? And can we do both in the same day?
Yes, you can do both in the same day. I wouldn't do them back to back because the results that you're looking for with this softening and soothing quality, you want to let that settle into your body, especially if you have a life in general that is that pushes your body a lot. The quality of these deep massages, deep tissue massages, breaking it up, lying on hard balls and these kinds of things, or using massage thumping devices to press into the body. You even can see the difference between what we've been doing, spending an hour and a half doing this, soothing, the quality of the mind, the quality of the breath that comes into this. And now the difference. It's very different. And there are times when you want to break up your tissue, to tear apart stagnation, to do those kinds of things in your body. And at most of the time, I honestly think that they are far overused because people don't understand the value and quality of softness. Oftentimes, people have never experienced kindness or softness, especially from themselves. And they have no sense of that space between the skin and the muscle. For most people, it's empty. What do you mean? There's just skin there. There's just skin. And so to help open those spaces in between, to find something different, at first it may feel like nothing to people, both because they don't know how to express the feeling that we're cultivating, and then the space that we're trying to reach is completely empty and ignored. And so we're trying to do something that we know we can feel. But instead, what this set is doing is creating something new. It's transforming and changing the system. I mean, traditionally, these methods are called I Jing. I Jing is changing. Like the I Ching is the book of changes. In this case, Jing is tissue, like a white tissue beneath the skin. I Jing, you're changing the quality of your tissue. You're becoming different. You're not just breaking it up and tearing it apart and trying to get it to move and make it stronger and do this thing. I'll make it flexible. The quality of that mind, the quality of the body that develops, you can see, you can hear it. It's different. And so you can certainly do both, but they do develop different things. And in my opinion, people tend to do far more of one than the other, and it should be the other way around. But that is my opinion. What was the other question?
The first one, I think you answered, is there a time and place for deeper massage like thumper and lacrosse balls? And then what is the purpose of these deeper layer massages?
Yeah, it's usually to break apart things, to tear things down, to force things apart, that kind of thing. And there's a time and place for that, in the same way that a lot of, modern surgeries, for instance, many of them are designed to burn things out, cut them out, disconnect things, tear things apart, remove stuff. Like, there's a quality to that. And there's a time and place for that, for sure. But you wouldn't want that to become the central part of your healing program. What does that mindset do? In the same way, there are healing methods where their whole thing where they focus on is cleansing, because there's this idea that we are dirty inside, all the time dirty, and we always need to clean, purge, get rid of something. You can do that, and then the mindset and the quality that gets developed from that kind of cultivation, you see that in the people. In the same way that you see the kind of work that I was working on the body, jackhammering on my body, that develops a different kind of quality of chi, a different kind of mind. It changes the quality of your mind and your emotions. And so all of these are a kind of medicine, and there's a time and a place for them. And you have to understand your own experience in order to know when you're trying to do that. But in my opinion, at least, the baseline experience that we want to have in our body is the soft, nurturing, loving, nourished quality, this full, peaceful quality. That's what all of the practices that we do here are trying to cultivate. And then if you have to cut something out or tear it apart or break it down, you can, but then there's always that soft fullness to flow in and heal it afterward. But very often people do one and not the other. And I prefer one to the other, in my opinion. I hope that answered your question. You think it did? Okay. Not that I want to sound judgmental of anyone's healing program. Everyone's healing is their own. There's a shape and a feel to what we're creating. And you want to take the time to let that develop in your system.
Chris says, thank you. That was a tricky question to answer. You did a great job. I'll listen again and try to understand.
Thanks. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I'm putting all of these up on Patreon, is so that people can re-listen and re-access, or just if they have a favorite sequence that we went through, because I'm trying to make each day a little bit different. The emphasis is a little bit different. The feel's a little bit different, because I want to let everybody have their own style. And if you ever find one that you like and you just want to replay it, and that's the style you want to cultivate, then it's totally fine to do that. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time. I love having you here. Melanie's in the background if you want to thank her for holding down the chat room. And please remember as well that this kindness that we are giving to ourselves, it's also nourishing to give it to our community, to your loved ones. So at least one time today, take a moment to spread this love to somebody else, to be gentle and to connect. And even that soft moment, you put your hand on their arm or their shoulder, and you connect and you transmit that sense of deep kindness and friendliness. People notice it, and you will notice a change in your community if you try to do that a little